Welcome, everybody, to another edition of The Calling. I'm your host, Scott Jones from One Brother, One Sister, and, of course, coming to you live from the Sober Life Studios. Thank you so much. If you are tuning in live, this is a Monday early afternoon, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're watching live, then put your comments in there, and we'll be able to read them and address your questions live during the show. If you're watching one of the replays, then certainly put your comments in there. We love to read them afterwards. We want to, if you have questions, we can answer them. If you have ideas about how we could better serve our first responders and our veterans, and that's what we're talking about is first responders and veterans on this program. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about veterans and post-traumatic stress disorder. It's also known post-traumatic stress syndrome. We know so much more about post-traumatic stress now, and we understand so much more about trauma. But finding services and finding help and getting the things that you need when you do suffer from these things, that's where the challenge can come in, and especially getting them done in a timely way. So today we're going to have a great conversation with two gentlemen. We got Nick Eckley and Luis Panchi from the PTSD Foundation of America. And they're going to tell you all about what they do and everything. But ask your questions. And once again, thank you for being here. Don't forget, like the show, okay? Subscribe to the channel, and please share this with your friends. So we're going to bring our friends in right now. We're going to add Nick Eckley and Luis Panchi, and they're coming to us from Tampa, Florida right now. And gentlemen, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
I'm doing just fine, and I'm trying to fix my. I love how when a remote doesn't work, if you hit it, it works for a minute.
That's technology.
I know that's technology. The other thing about spinning the batteries, I don't know why that works, but somehow it does. You just spin the batteries. One day I'll replace them. But both of you are former Marine. Well, I shouldn't say former because I hear once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine, right?
That's right.
All right, but you are Marines no longer in active service, I guess we'll say.
Correct.
Nick, tell me about your time in the Marines. When was it, and how long did you spend in the Marines?
Yeah, so I joined the Marine Corps in 2007. Right out of high school, I joined at 17, actually, escaping a rougher upbringing. I had a super loving mom, but not so much on the father's side. Kind of ran away from my hometown back in Ohio and joined the Marine Corps, and I did really well in my ASVAB, but I went infantry. Just kind of was like, if I'm going to go be a Marine, I'm going to be a Marine. And went through boot camp, then School of Infantry, and then went to what's called a FAST team, Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team. It's actually where I met Lewis. We served there together for just over 3 years, and then I went to 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines out of Camp Lejeune. Did what would be my 4th and final tour in 2010. I left 2011 was when I got hit in March in Afghanistan. Ended up getting retired. Took about almost 2 years for me to get retired after getting wounded, and I went down a addiction path after that, and that all led me to what I do today.
We'll definitely delve into that a little bit if you don't mind sharing your story. But
Sure.
Before we do, Luis, how about your journey? Joining and why you joined and what you did.
I mean, I think for my generation, it all stems back to 9/11, right? And I remember I was in 7th grade, and then when 9/11 happened, and it was, I'm going to join, right? I'm going to do something to serve my country. Fast forward, it was my senior year of high school, and one of my buddies that graduated the year before came in and visited the high school in his dress blues, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do, right there, right? He was an ugly guy, but the uniform made him look good. But I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I joined the Marine Corps, right? At the time, my ex-wife was pregnant with our first child, my senior year of high school. So the Marine Corps worked out right for us. I had a job, I had stability for my future family. Um, Joined the Marine Corps 2007. I graduated boot camp, went to meet Nick at a Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team down in Norfolk, Virginia. Was there for a couple of years. Once I left there, I went to Camp Pendleton, California, out in 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines. I was out there for 3 years. 3 years, went to Afghanistan, couple deployments over there. And then after California, I went to Paris Island to train recruits in basic training. So I was out there in Weapons Battalion, teaching them basic infantry skills, how to shoot a rifle, when it comes to qualifications on the rifle range, when it comes to table two and like course quarter combat, stuff like that. I really enjoyed that part of my career in the Marine Corps. And then 9 years later, 2016, I got out.
Well, you might have been one of the people who trained my son on Paris Island.
Really? Where did he go?
What?
What year did he go?
I'd have to do the math, and I'm pretty bad at that. Let's see. Probably would have been about 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Between 12 and 13. Now, yes, between 12 and 13 years ago, he was in there. But anyway, he came out and he had his own issues that he came across. But yeah, thank you both for your service, first of all. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you for support.
It's, it means a lot. And I want to tell everybody out there, if you're listening to this, or, if you see somebody who's in the service, any first responder, but especially our veterans, thank them for what they've done. Because, you might be talking to somebody who had a pretty good, maybe 4 or 8 or 12 or even 20 years. But you also could be talking about somebody who put their life on the line and had to do some serious stuff for our freedoms. So thank them for that. Take some time and do that. Buy them a cup of coffee. It's the least you could do. Least you could do. Nick, you talked about being wounded. Now you're talking about a physical wound. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what we do now here with the PTSD Foundation of America, we're talking about the wounds that nobody sees, the things that happen to people. Did you have any experiences with that as well as those wounds that people don't see?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think me getting injured and losing some guys and not being able to bring my whole team home, that just kind of brings on more of that guilt and more of that unseen wound. I hear it all the time when people find out that I was injured by an IED blast. You get all without fail. Well, you look good. Well, that's the goal, right? I don't walk around looking mangled and messed up, but there's a lot of guys that look good that really aren't doing so hot, and so I struggle with PTSD every day. Thankfully, organizations like PTSD Foundation are out there and were able to give me some tools in my toolbox to help me give a more productive life, and work through some of these things. But it's a lot of days are harder than others.
Yeah, Luis, I guess it's true that anytime you spend in the service, whether you maybe had your own experiences with PTSD, you're definitely exposed to it with other people. I mean, you probably can't fill a room full of Marines without half of them having some sort of traumas or something. Did you have some experience with this either through yourself or with the people you worked with?
Luis? Oh yeah, definitely. It was hard because I'm Hispanic, right? In my culture, we don't believe in like mental health and stuff like that, right? So being from this culture and being a man, right? It doesn't affect me. Well, it did affect me, right? And I didn't see it till I got out the military, till I was by myself, till I didn't have that camaraderie anymore, till I didn't have that purpose anymore. And that's when it really hit me hard. And I struggled for a while. And luckily I was able to get out of it.
Wow. Do either of you have any idea what percentage of people are coming back from active service with some sort of PTSD or even just trauma problems? Nick, is there any numbers on that?
Yeah, there's a ton. So, it really depends on where you look when you look at numbers, but I'm a very data-driven individual, and we're a data-driven organization. So it's reported that about 27% of guys coming home are diagnosed with PTSD. And then it's deemed that another 47% are living with PTSD that's undiagnosed.
You said 27% or
27% are currently diagnosed, and then another 47 to 52% are living with it that are not diagnosed with it.
Wow, those are the people like Luis was just saying. I'm a man. Let me just
Mhm.
choke it down, and I'll, and not realizing that stuff comes out sideways. You don't know when. Sometimes you don't know how it's going to come out, but it
Mhm.
always does. I assume that it'll get you sooner or later. Is that an accurate statement?
Oh yeah.
Oh, oh yeah, and that's the thing. There's such a stigma on, oh, if I go to medical, I'm gonna get clowned, or I'm gonna be soft or weak or whatever. So
Mhm.
you don't say anything, right? And because of that, it does keep those numbers low, and then the DoD and the VA can say, hey, well, right now only 7% of our guys are
Mhm.
dealing with X, Y, or Z, and it's because you have 70% of them that are like, well, I don't want to say anything because I don't want my career to be ruined. I don't want my buddies to clown me. I don't want
Mhm.
to be looked at weak or whatever the case is. So that stigma, it plays in the veteran and first responder community. It's brutal.
Mhm.
Wow, wow. I just can't imagine how many people are out there. Are they? Is this all about self-reporting, or is there a way that they have something in place? I want to talk about what you guys are doing with the foundation in a minute, but I'm talking about the active service. Is it only self-reporting, or is somebody watching them to see if they're displaying any signs? Either one of you can answer that.
I think it's gonna be, man. It's I want it's a difficult question to answer, but PTSD is going to be different for everybody, right? You have that one guy that served, and he's watching a action movie of World War II, and his heart starts pumping, and he's excited. That's some form of PTSD, right?
Right.
When it comes to reporting numbers, in my experience, is when you obviously, when it comes to census and surveys and all stuff like that, you have the individuals that go out there and they survey the community per se, and then that's how they get some numbers, right? Do you have PTSD? Do you think you have PTSD? Were you exposed to this? However they do it, right? And then you have the people that report it themselves. And it's just difficult to answer, honestly, for my point of view.
Yeah. What do you think, Nick?
So when you look at it, I would say, to answer your question, it is majority self-reported. And one of the reasons it doesn't go reported as much as, and I'm sure Lewis remembers this too. When we come home from a deployment, we're sitting on that flight line. We got to fill out this little questionnaire right before we can get off the bird and go home and see our family. And it's all mental health related questions. Well, if anything that you put on there pops, I said, you're sitting on the plane longer. You got to now go to medical. You got to do all these other things. Like, I just want to go see my family. So I'm going to put no, 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 no. Right.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's, back to that stigma of, well, I'm not going to report it now because I don't want it to dictate what I feel my next steps
Mhm.
are.
Isn't it also partially true? Not in all cases, but in a lot of cases, the trauma that you're experiencing while you're in active service, you don't necessarily know it's happening at that time because you are hyper vigilant and you're on alert all the time, and you're basically, it's like this adrenaline thing, and it's
Mhm.
not until you return home that these things start to come out. Is that a true statement?
Like Lewis said, it depends on the individual, but absolutely. But I mean, the hardest part about it is, Lewis and I have both seen, we've patrolled together, we've seen ugly things together, and it affects us differently, right? So I might be looking at it in that moment of, man, this is really messed up. Like, this is,
Mhm.
but that's maybe based on where I grew up, or the morals I grew up, or whatever the case is, culture I grew up in. And then Lewis could be looking at, like, okay, well, it's just another day, another dollar, let's keep moving.
Mhm.
And then 10 years down the line, he's looking back on it like, oh man, that was really messed up.
Mhm.
Where I've already processed that because I process it more in the moment. So, but I would say adrenaline definitely plays a factor. You're in survival mode. It's, kill or be killed, and I'm going to get myself out of here. I'll deal with the rest of it later. And so a lot of times that later, it's
Mhm.
just not a matter of if, it's when.
And you don't have time to think, honestly. You're
Yeah.
there to focus on the mission, whether it's you're in country, right, in Afghanistan, Iraq, or you're back in the States training for the mission. You don't have time to think, right? You gotta, all right, when this happens, I'm gonna be in this here. When this situation happens, I need to do this, right? And it's all for the brothers and sisters next to you, right? And so you can come home at the end of the day, and it's for the people that you're protecting. You don't have time to think. Um, and when all that winds down, right, for myself, all that wind down, and I was at my house by myself with nobody around me, that's when it hit, right? And
Right.
It's definitely hard. The thinking aspect of it is, I don't want to say we're too dumb to think, or we're too naive to whatever the case is, but there's no time, right?
Well,
It's
you're
everything's
still
mission.
in it. You're still
Yeah.
in it, and you're still surrounded by other military people, and you guys are all kind of together. And it's like, even if you're feeling out of sorts, you know you can rely on the guy next to you or the girl next to you. And it's,
Hmm.
but then all of a sudden you go back into the real world and it's just you. Even though there are many services and things for people. But let me get a couple of these. We got some comments coming in. Of course, you guys know this guy, Sam Razmi, is with us. He's saying, love these guys. They will literally move mountains to help our veterans. So, hey, Sam, thanks for watching with us and tuning in. And Judy Temple is sharing. She says, glad I caught this. I'm very active with vets and active military in Dothan these days, or Dothan. I'm not sure what that is. Thank you. But she's thanking you for your service and stuff. So let's get into it. I mean, so you both had some experiences, been around it, felt it yourself. You come out. I guess Nick, you would have come out first.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Did you directly go straight into I got to find a place where I can help people, or how did that come about for you?
No, so it was a pretty roundabout journey for me to get to a position in a place where I could help other people. When I first came out, I couldn't even help myself. So I got hit in 2011 in March. I didn't get retired until October of 2012. And I really struggled getting around, walking. I learned to get back on my feet with my 10-month-old daughter at the time, who was walking, but was stuck with a walker and a cane and wheelchair and you name it, kind of getting through it, dealing with the pain and nerve issues. Woke up addicted to morphine and stayed addicted. Marine Corps said, all right, well, we don't need your services anymore. See you later. And you go home awaiting orders, waiting to get retired. So I sat there for probably, I got retired in October. I didn't get any VA benefits until March of the following year. So I couldn't go to the VA because I wasn't a veteran yet, because I wasn't retired and I didn't have all my paperwork. And they sent me away from the base. So I had no base near me to be able to go and get medical care either. So I just did it myself. And that was a lot of opiates and a lot of abuse of other medications and drinking on top of it. And we ended up moving from Ohio to Texas. I got awarded a home from Homes for Our Troops, and the closest house they had to Ohio was in Texas, I guess. So we moved, family moved out there, and I immediately took an immediate downturn, even worse. Abusing medication, spend every dollar I had on opiates, and got to a point where I finally went to the VA and asked for help. And he was just like, I can't deal with this anymore, between the pain and the thoughts and just everything going on. Like, I just feel alone. I was isolated. I hadn't talked to any of my buddies for months. And she looked me dead in the face and she goes, well, you're a Marine, you can take it. And I was like, man, okay, I guess I'm just soft. You know what I mean? There's only one way out of this. So I went home and went into my safe, grabbed a gun and jumped back in the vehicle, drove back up there, and I was going to kill her and I was going to kill myself. And something stopped me. I just was sitting in the truck and I called the VA crisis line. And I was on hold for 27 minutes with a gun in my mouth. And finally I said, you know what, I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of debating. I'm tired of trying to figure out if this is how this is going to play out. And I don't want to hurt anybody else. So I'm just going to end it. Put the gun in my mouth, pulled the trigger, and obviously it didn't go off. While this was all going on, my wife was calling a couple of my buddies that I had served with. And one of my guys came up and practically ripped the door off my truck and took me to Camp Hope out in Houston. When I went, it was a pretty small facility. I mean, it's still on the same 5-acre lot, but there wasn't anything built up yet. It was just warrior groups, guys sitting around a fire and kind of casting our burdens into that fire and giving them back to God. But it was the first time since, I had deployed with my buddies that I didn't feel alone. And it saved my life. For me to be able to sit there and get some of these things off my chest that I was holding on to. I didn't want to talk to my mom about it. I didn't want to talk to my wife about it. I certainly didn't want to call in my buddies I served with and bring up a bad day for them either. And, I just didn't want, my loved ones to see the monster that I had to be, or the monster that I perceived I was while I was deployed. And then I did, like I said, I didn't want to burden my buddies with anything. But sitting around that fire, there's, about 20 of us, and, seeing that I'm not alone, that everyone's kind of going through similar things, gave me the ability to finally say, you know what, this is where I can get help, and I'm going to get it off my chest and learn the tools. And, after I spent my time at Camp Hope, I was there for about 14 months. And I never received a bill for it. I left, went on my acceptance journey and my forgiveness journey. And that kind of led me to Florida. And I didn't really look back at the time, and got in the private sector, was running construction companies and moving freight and doing all kinds of things to, just provide for my family. And a couple of years ago, kind of hit a wall there with, I did really well at one of the companies I was working for. They come in and they're popping champagne and throwing drugs all over the place, and all of them know that I've been sober for 8-9 years at that time. And I just looked at my wife like, they don't care about me at all. They just care about the money I bring in. And I struggled going home that night because I smelled terrible. I knew I didn't partake in any of it, but I knew that was a trigger for my wife coming home, smelling
Right.
like. And she was like, "Honey, it's okay. Just come home. Like, we'll deal with it." And I got home and I told her, I was like, I gotta make a change. A couple weeks later, I get a phone call from Camp Hope, and they said, "Hey, we want to start a team in Florida." And I was like, I'll be darned. You know what I mean? So kind of just, a God shot, really, for that to kind of line up the way that it lined up. And now I'm able to reach my hand out and help the other guys here in Florida that are struggling the same way that I was.
Nick, thank you so much for being so honest with your story like that. But, and it's, you needed that. How important was it that veterans reached out to you that first time you went to the Camp Hope fire? And how important was it to have a veteran reach out to you?
So that, to me, that's our secret sauce, right? Is for someone to look me in the face and say, "Hey, man, I get it," and be genuine, and me be able to look and see that in their eyes, like, wow, this dude does know, right? That to me was, it's why I went and got the help. Right. If it would have, I'd seen 1,000 civilians that were like, "Oh yeah, we'll help you here. Take this pill, take that pill, whatever." And it's like, you have no idea what I've going on. I'm trying to tell you, you're not listening. Right. So to have that peer that could look at me and say, "Brother, you're home. I got you." It reminded me of being back in the Corps. You know what I mean? When we come back on from a rough mission or whatever, and, we lost somebody, or just, things didn't go the way we envisioned them. We had our guys there to, pick you up. And most of the time we picked each other up, it was like, "Hey, ugly smile," or, "Hey, what's the matter with you?" And just kind of clown each other. But it was always out of place of love. And those are some of the things that we're able to give back to our veteran community now, that, we just haven't had. And that, that's our goal, is to really build that camaraderie and fellowship and replace some of those bonds and build that community that we had while we were in that we no longer have.
Wow. Well, now I want to get into the foundation, but before I do, Luis, was your transition back to civilization, if we will call it that, or back to the world, and getting involved, was it a different situation, or did you have similar problems?
So yes and no, right? So I got out in 2016, and I was going through a nasty divorce at the time. So I had a lot of hatred in my heart. My kids were being taken from me. It was ugly, right? At the end of the day, I was up for reenlistment, or I was up to get out, and I was like, let me get out, go be with the kids, right? The kids followed me their whole childhood. Now it's time for me to follow them. So I got out. So I didn't get out on the way I wanted to get out, right? I wanted to be a lifer. I was on road to get promoted to staff sergeant. I was really doing good in my career in the Marine Corps. So I get out. I'm sitting at home, nothing to do, no job set up, nothing, right? Just, and then it hits me like, what am I doing? What am I gonna do? All right, let's start planning this, planning that, and then really Marine Corps orientated, right? I need to plan for this, plan for that, plan for this, and those plans start failing, right? And when those plans start failing, I started getting depressed. And then it comes to a point to where I had some buddies that were in a motorcycle club, and they were like, oh, to their buddies, oh, this guy's a badass, he's a Marine. I'm like, you're dang right, I'm a badass. And it turned sideways, right? I ended up joining a 1% motorcycle club. And what people know is about 1% of motorcycle clubs is they don't do great things. And that was me, right? I wasn't doing great things. I was doing unspeakable things, things I don't like to talk about these days. And I was in a real dark spot. And that I was spiraling. I was going nowhere, right? I was out of a job because I didn't want to get a job, right? Motorcycle was my life. It was bad. It wasn't until I met my wife to where I was able to realize that, there is more, right? There is another purpose. I told myself I wasn't going to get married again and not have any more kids. And this lady convinced me to get married and have another kid, right? So it was a beautiful thing that I met her, right? And it was so hard. I tell it to where I was in a darkness, right? PTSD, depression, it's a darkness. And then all of a sudden, in that darkness, I see a hand reaching, and it's my wife, and she pulls me out, right? And joining the PTSD Foundation, um, I get to be that hand that reaches into someone's darkness, right?
Wow.
And I love it, and I love that I can help my brothers and sisters out. I love that I could tell them, hey, I went through the same thing. I've been there. I've done that. This is what I did to better myself. Let me help you better yourself, right? And it is hard because it happened to me, right? So I get so emotional. I get so attached to where the situation they're in. But I love it. I love every part of it. Right now, I get to be that hand that reaches into someone's darkness. In 2007 when I enlisted, uh, I wore the words on my chest, United States Marine Corps. Now God's called me to wear a different set of words on my chest. It's the PTSD Foundation of America, and I love it. I couldn't ask for anything else.
That's pretty amazing. And I don't think it can be overstated enough that just making a transition back into civilian life after being in the Corps or any of the services it could be a cause for depression and other issues
Mhm.
because of the loss of structure, the loss of, you know, uh, trusting everybody around you, going out into the world where you can't trust anybody and doing all those things. That in itself, even if we're not talking about things that happen in war or big traumas, that's enough to create serious problems for vets, right, Nick?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the hardest, really the hardest things that we work through. And I would say the issue there is, when you're 17, 18, 19 years old, you join the military. I don't care what branch you go to. You now feel grown, right? Like, oh, I'm grown. I'm
Mhm.
out doing my own thing, right?
Yeah.
And that is the biggest false sense of security you're ever going to get in your life, because
Mhm.
they tell you when to eat, they tell you when to pee, they tell you, they keep you in shape, they feed you, they clothe you, they do everything for you, right? When I got out, I didn't know how to pay a water bill. I was like, what do you mean I got to pay a water bill? Water's not free. It comes from God, right? Um, what I mean? Because I lived in base housing with my wife, and everything's right there. What I mean? We're good. They just take your BAH and you don't pay any bills. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Mhm.
well, what do you mean? I gotta buy clothes. I gotta buy a suit. I gotta buy water. Like it was crazy. So these
Wow.
guys come out, or guys and gals come out, and it's a real quick awakening when you're like, well, wait a minute. Okay, well, if I'm struggling, I can't just go talk to the chaplain. I can't go to Military One Source and
Mhm.
get a quick $300 advance on my pay so I can pay my insurance or take care of this or that. What do you, no one's going to come and fix my AC. Well, I got to pay for that, right? So and these are things that they put you in crisis really, really quickly, and you just don't know how to navigate it.
Well, that's not something that people spend a lot of time considering is the arrested development that happens when you go into the military. Because you're right, it's like everything is structured for you. It's not like, hey, I chose to work out today. It's like I worked out because that's what I'm supposed to do, and that's all I did. And
Right.
then when you get
Sure.
home, you got a choice between going to UFIT or sitting on the sofa. there's nobody there telling you what the right thing is to do.
Yeah.
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 And you're gonna chill. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, the other thing too. One of the big things that we talk about is when you look at kind of how our country's evolved through the military and through wars. World War I, World War II in Korea, how did guys come home? They came home on a boat. And it took 5, 6, 7, 9 months to get home, right? And they're surrounded by their buddies.
Right.
Vietnam, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, post 9/11. 24 hours ago, we were just in a firefight. And now I'm walking through Publix, supposed to be okay. Now I'm supposed to just be in my car driving to and from work when less than a week ago I was getting shot at.
What an incredible thought that is, that hours separate you from the war or from the conflict, and having to be relaxed and calm while you're shopping for milk and bread. That to me, I can't even think about shifting yourself in that way.
You can't. That's the hard part.
I can't imagine that shift, because
I know
I know when I'm doing something that's really strenuous or something that's really hard, I'm like, well, I need a day or two to decompress and to just, from me doing something silly or something stupid out in the neighborhood. You guys coming out of that situation, that's a tough transition. Have they improved that transition at all with people, or is it really, like you said, quick form, fill it out, now go?
That's pretty much it. And I think the important part there too is like World War II Korea guys, when they're coming home and they have a nightmare in the middle of the night, well, they got 30 of their buddies that they just went through the same thing with that are sitting there telling, hey man, it's okay, we're home. You're safe, right? Where when I do that at home, my wife's like, hey, what the hell's the matter with you? You know what I mean? Like, I was lucky. My wife's a Marine too, so she at least had a better understanding than the average civilian wife. But at the same time, there's things we bring home that they're just like, what's going on? And that's a big thing on the education piece for it. I can't necessarily speak on if they've done better with guys coming home. I would say no, because I feel like a lot of the people that are coming out now, I don't know if they seem worse off because I'm doing better, or if they seem more worse off because they are more worse off. I'm not 100% on that. But I would say that a lot of them are coming out pretty rough. So I would assume, just from deductive reasoning, that they haven't gotten any better at the way that they bring us back and integrate us back into society.
And it's hard because you do have your senior leadership, right, that has deployed before, and that they can help you and they will mentor you right on your way back home. But those guys are struggling too. Those guys are alcoholics too, right? And it's just a chain passed down. Hey, just drink a little bit, you'll be all right. Forget about it. You're home. Be home. You'll be all right. And then like Nick said, you're with the family, right? You're with the family and you are at Publix. You're at the grocery store. And then you got someone behind you and you freak out and you do back up, please. And your wife's like, why you got to be so loud? Or why is it, well, why is not that okay? We don't know how to communicate why that's not okay with us or for us.
Right.
And then it causes problems in the marriage. And it is very difficult when you don't have that system to help you out, adjust, or readjust to coming back home and being home.
Excellent. Let me catch up here real quick. Judy has clarified Dothan, Alabama, Fort Novosi, formerly Rucker, is here, and Army helicopter training. I guess she's up there working with them and helping them, being involved, and thank you for doing that. Safe Place is saying this is awesome. Thanks, guys. And Judy's also agreeing, saying that she saw it all the time with people coming back because her cousin worked for the Coast Guard, and people come back from World War II. But let's bring this. I mean, we got a lot of personal stuff that we talked about here, and I appreciate you guys being open with that. But the PTS Foundation, like you mentioned before, Nick, it was Camp Hope, and then PTS Foundation was kind of born from that. And what is, I know we're talking about the unseen wounds, but what was the necessity behind forming the PTSD Foundation of America? What was the necessity?
So the necessity was, Pastor Malsby, David Malsby, he's kind of the brains and the heart behind Camp Hope and its existence and the PTSD Foundation. we're based out of Houston. Texas is number one in veteran population. They have been since as long as I can remember, right? They're all, a lot of veterans come from Texas. And, he would go throughout his day and just see guys, underneath bridges. And a lot of those guys had military duffel bags. They had military hats, some of them still in military fatigues. And, he started looking into it like, there's got to be something that we can do for these guys. Like, this can't be the answer, right? Like, there's no way this is all we can give back to these guys that went and did what they did. And so, he started just grinding and working and going up and talking to these guys like, hey, can I introduce you to God and talk to you about some things? So we are a faith-based organization. We are Christ-centered. That doesn't mean that you have to be a Christian to come to us. It just means that a lot of the principles and things that we do are going to be, focused on giving our burdens back to God. We look at faith as a, something you believe in, something bigger than yourself, that you're not so egotistical that you're it's just me and me alone. But, for me, when I was so mad at God. How could a loving God let this happen? There's no way he exists. There's no any of that, right? And really it was Pastor Malsby that opened my eyes and opened my heart back up to say, it's not God that's doing these things. There's good and bad everywhere in the world, and and that education piece of it for me to say, okay, well, let me take a look at it. Right. Because, we're lost. We're lost souls. We're, a bunch of vagabonds out there trying to figure it out. And, and Pastor Malsby, he's not a veteran. He's not military affiliated in any way. It was just something that weighed heavy on his heart, calling from God, that he jumped in and did something about it. And now, we've been able to impact over 10,000 veterans' lives in the last 10 years, in a positive manner.
Well, you said 10,000?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. Now, this was based out of Texas, and then they started opening up satellites, if you will, or locations in other states. And I understand that you are the general manager of the Florida chapter, and Luisa, you're the assistant manager of the Florida chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So is this done growing, or do you see so much more? I mean.
So I will tell you, even back when I went, I was one of the original guys to kind of go through warrior groups and stuff. Back then, more than 40% of everyone that was coming to these groups was not from Texas. Most guys were coming from out of state. So there was, a group of individuals that would rent out a whole floor of a hotel room. And this was, before we were a residential program and all that, but they would rent out a floor of the hotel room. Guys would stay from out of state and then, come to camp on Tuesdays and Thursdays for warrior groups. And then, other days we would do other activities, go out in the community, beautify Camp Hope, and just kind of work to build it to, what the vision was. When I was there wasn't a building there. Now it's on, like I said, it's on the same grounds, but there's, 80 beds for residents. There's a huge, beautiful gym. There's a chapel. There's so much growth has happened in the 10 years. Like, it was wild when I went back to see how much it had grown. I couldn't believe it. And then even still, I look and I'm like, man, it's crazy that we're able to do this much. So, obviously the goal is growth. Is that sustainable? You never know. Between COVID, COVID was rough. They chopped a lot of chapters during COVID just because, people didn't know what was happening next week, let alone next year. So a lot of funding, kind of escaped, and just the landscape of medical anything changed. So, what we could and couldn't do in terms of getting guys to help, we didn't necessarily follow all the CDC guidelines. It was, this guy needs help, we're going to get him help. I don't care what that looks like, whether he's sick or not, we're going to get him. So we caught a little bit of flack for that just based on the way the world is. And then with inflation now, people are thinking a little bit more about their pocketbook and if they're, able or willing to donate to an organization. But yeah, I mean, growth, we'd love to have a Camp Hope in Texas, a Camp Hope in Florida, and a Camp Hope in California, because it's needed. It is truly needed nationwide. It's just, the financial side of that, you never know.
Yeah. Luis, I assume that Nick had a hand in dragging you into this. Not that you probably weren't happy to be a part of it, but you know, what you're learning is being a part of this foundation and hearing about the real numbers. Does any of that shock you, Louis?
It does, right? And being in the world we live in now, a lot of things shouldn't shock me, but it does, right? Going back to how I got involved in here, so uh, Nick and I will own a construction company together. We went our separate ways, right? Things happen. We went our separate ways. I joined the Carpenters Union here in Florida, and I was enjoying it, having a good time. Got promoted quick within the ranks of the Carpenters Union. Was a general foreman at one point when Nick asked me to be his assistant manager. And when he told me about it, I was like, I'm in, right? It's not me that needs convincing. It was my wife that needed convincing, right? Because it was a pay cut, right? Working for a nonprofit doesn't give you as much money as a carpenter does here in Florida, but I wanted in 100%, right? And we worked through all those difficulties with myself, my wife, the budget, the money, the house, everything, and finally was able to get the job, right? But when it comes to the numbers, um, it's I want to say it's almost sickening how things happen, right? And I don't know if you ever heard of Project Rebirth. It's a study that Duke University did, and it talks about the suicide numbers. The 22 a day, right? And the 22 a day, that's not the right number. First, the right number, last time I checked, the right number was like 44, 45 a day, and it's
Wow.
because the VA doesn't count, suicide by cop, doesn't count in OD, doesn't count, if you were homeless and you're not reported to the VA. There's a lot of criteria that the VA doesn't count, and in order to be deemed a suicide by a veteran, there's a lot of criteria that needs to be met, right? So just little things like that, not little, but big things like that, right? It's insane thinking about what else is there, right? What else do we not know? What else is hidden or just kept away from the people, and it's hard to think about.
Wow, what a great point there. And listen, I don't want to knock the VA, and I know you guys don't either. They're doing a huge job, and
Mhm.
the resources aren't bad to do it, but just the time it takes too long to get things done. There's too much red tape. Um, Part of that is the VA itself, the way it's structured. Part of it is just the when you start talking about insurance money and this money and that money, and everybody wants their different ways of doing things.
Mhm.
Nick, we were talking before we went on the air about, one of the beauteous things about the PTSD Foundation of America is they're not beholden to any of that. They're all about direct service and finding ways to make things work. Is that a good way to state it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously we have our processes and procedures in place. But, for the most part, it's pretty simple and streamlined. Now, I'm obviously not going to share any names or anything, but I had a crisis call last
Right.
night. Individual's significant other called, and he was suicidal, just came off of a Baker Act for a suicide attempt and was struggling, and she had to go back to work and was like, I'm afraid to leave for work because I don't know what I'm going to come home to. I said, okay. I said, well, let me talk to him. Let me, kind of figure out, see where he's at, see if he's safe, and we'll go from there. If I need to get him into a facility, I'll get him into a facility. And, so I called him. And I mean, this is Sunday at 7:00 at night. I'm sitting at home. I got a wife and 3 kids. And she called me. I answered my phone and I called him. And I just said, hey, buddy, what's going on? Talk to me. And it was, you could hear the relief in his voice. Right. Like it was just man, what do you want to listen to what I have to say? And, I asked him, when's your next VA appointment? What do you have going on? And he's like, dude, I can't get in. He's like, it's taking 6 months just to get a mental health referral. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, I'm here. What do you need? Right. So we partner with a lot of other organizations that, if it's not a service that I provide directly, I'm going to get you in front of somebody. And everything that we do and everyone we partner with is at no cost to the vet or their family. So, I linked them up with Camaraderie Foundation, and they provide counseling to veterans and their significant others. And I mean, they called them right away, and it was, so I was able to give them that peer side, and I was able to pair them with that clinical side instantly. And if this was a guy that needed to go to Camp Hope, we would have started that process too. I mean, obviously right now they're getting pounded by a hurricane. So me being able to fly someone to Camp Hope right now is going to be tough. But generally I could get you there and within a couple of days. And, and you're not going to be sitting there on pins and needles waiting for a couple of days. My team's going to be there with you, making sure you're safe, making sure you're fed, making sure everything's good. I'd love to tell you I could get someone to Camp Hope within 24 hours. And sometimes we can, but I can't make that promise. And then the next time the hurricanes come in and they're like, you said 24 hours, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But we can usually get it done pretty quickly. They got to go through a clinical intake with our clinical team just to make sure that we can meet their needs. But part of that falls on my team here in Florida. When we're talking to a guy, we're going to know if they need, what level of care they need, as long as they're being honest with us. And obviously that part's difficult too, but like we work with guys like Sam, that jumped on a little bit ago. Yeah. And I mean, that dude's awesome. He's one of the few people that we've met in the for-profit space that cares about the person as a life, not as a number. And so, those are guys that we send individuals to get some help. And I think I just sent them one or two last week. So I mean, it's going to be, we're going to work with you, whatever it looks like. But yeah, we don't have those barriers to care that a lot of other people do. We just don't believe in it.
I think that's great. So without that, the government funding, you don't have to worry about all those things. You're privately funded through private donations and charitable events. You got to call me when there's a golf tournament, brothers. I'll be there.
September 8th.
Okay, I'm not going to win, but I'll play.
Yeah.
I'll play. But I have a question here. Judy works with vets, and she wants to know, do you train on recognizing suicidal indications or ideations? They're looking for things like that. Do you guys have like educational pieces to your organization as well?
Absolutely. So we are all either already peer certified or working towards peer certification. We're all assist trained, so applied suicide intervention. We're all crisis intervention stress management training, and thanks to you and Karen, we are intervention trained as well. So we're looking to get the rest of our foundation on the intervention train as well. But yeah, we do work. One of our biggest goals is that education piece. So my goal, and I say it all the time, you'll never hear me ask for money, right? I'll never say, hey, I need $5,000 so my chapter can do whatever, or what, I don't do it. But I'd rather have 3,000 people donate $1 than one person donate 3,000. And the reason for that is because that gives me 3,000 people out there spreading our message, telling people that they're not alone, and able to look at some of these signs. So we absolutely help. And when it comes to kind of recognition, what you're looking for, the biggest thing that I'll give you in a piece of advice is ask the hard question. If you think that someone's going through something and you're not really sure, the number one reason people don't ask if someone's feeling suicidal is because they're not ready to hear the answer. They don't want to hear the answer of, yes, I'm going to commit suicide, or yes, I'm thinking about it. So
it's scary. It's terrifying that somebody might say something, because then now you can't walk away. You've got to be.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But you think though, right? So just getting someone to say it, like, yes, I am thinking about committing suicide, that makes it more real for them too. And now they're like, oh shoot, maybe I should get some help. Maybe I should talk to this person in front of me. But if you just, you're not thinking about committing suicide, are you? Oh no, I'm good. Oh, okay, now I can walk away, right? It's got to be direct. Are we talking about suicide? Are you thinking about suicide? So that's the biggest thing. If you see anyone that's just not the norm, right? That's another reason why we run warrior groups all across the country. Gives me and my team a chance to see you week to week.
Mm-hmm.
I can see you. What did you look like last week, and how do you look now? Are you more disheveled this week? Have you gotten a shower? Have you ironed your clothes? Have you washed your clothes? Have you cleaned out your car? Are you doing well, or aren't you? Right? It gives my guys the ability to see them week to week and say, okay, you know what? We might need to have a conversation with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little bit different, a little bit more beat up. So, observing is everything. And that's, the biggest goal that we do is, put ourselves in front of these guys every week to make sure we can see them, and then we can ask that hard question. And it is a hard question. It absolutely is, because you got to be ready for that answer to not be one that you were hoping for, and to be able to act. But I'll tell you, if she asks and they say yes and she doesn't know what to do, she can always call our crisis line, and we'll jump in it right then and there.
Wow. I have on the screen for our viewers the website, weblink.donorperfect.com/Florida chapter. Donate $5, just anything. Let's not leave it to the uber rich to decide that they're going to donate all of the funding. Like Nick just said, 3,000 people each donate $1. That's helping a lot of people. You guys can do so much work with that $3,000, and every dollar counts. Every dollar counts, and you guys put it to work very well, and so that's appreciated. So it's on the screen, and this is going to be out there, so you can rewind and get that information anytime you need it. Luis, what is the most rewarding thing about doing this and working with PTSD Foundation of America?
Man, it's gonna be the people we work with. Seeing them from day one to where they're down in the dumps, they thinking about hurting themselves, to 2 months, 3 months, a year later, and they are the happiest person in the world. Right? Just that change in their face, in their mood, in their language. Man, it's very exciting. Like this past Saturday, we had a warrior group at one of our churches, and man, the one of the gentlemen there, from day one, it was a certain mood, and from now seeing him, talking to him, being around him, it's just so enlightening, so wonderful to be around that guy. And he has lots of things to say, good things. Yeah, man, that's I love it. I love it. Right, day one, they're don't want to be around you, don't want to talk to you, they want to fight you, they pull a gun on you, they want to call the cops. To day whatever, they love you, want to give you hugs, they kiss you on the cheek. I love it.
Nick, same thing. What kind of personal reward do you get from doing this work?
Man, I'll be honest with you. It's might be cliche or whatever, but a smile, right? What's a smile worth to somebody?
Yeah.
A lot of these guys that we roll up on don't have many smiles and haven't had a smile in a long time. But like Lewis was saying, you fast forward to 6 months down the line, 10 months down the line, and they can't stop smiling, right? Because now their roof that had a leak is replaced and they didn't have to pay for it, or their car that was broke down, it got fixed and didn't have to pay for it. They needed a washer, whatever it is, right? Because our goal is to meet you where you're at, right? And that's where you're at financially, spiritually, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. We're going to meet you there, and we're going to work you individually, right? We see everybody one of one. Just because everyone's been through similar things doesn't mean we're going to deal with it in a similar manner, right? Even the guys that we meet that are addicts, that are currently on substances, it's like, okay, well, not every person using meth is going to act the same way. Right? It'd be a heck of a lot easier to fix them if that was the case. But to see them on the other side of that and have that smile and see the reconnection with their family, see that rekindled joy, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? And the way I look at it is, I've been through some of these things, and I'm going to be the person that I needed on those days, right? When I was feeling like I was want to give up and I was done, I need to be the person that I needed to see on those days. And I think that's what my team really excels in doing is just meeting them and being there for them and working toward that smile. We talk about, we unpack a lot of stuff in a warrior group and in a one-on-one. So there's days where, guys are shedding a ton of tears, and that's okay. We don't put the stigma on them. Nothing that we do is a pissing contest. I don't care if you were a cook or you're a Navy SEAL. We're going to go on. We're going to work with you. We're going to, whatever is affecting you, we're going to deal with it. And to see them come out on that other side and see life, right? To actually get to see the life come back into them is unparalleled.
That's incredible. And, you made a good point. Two people standing side by side, experiencing the same moment, that same traumatic event. Each one's going to carry it differently, and each one's going to respond to it differently. And that's what makes this hard. And addiction is much the same way. You're right. Two people addicted to heroin One becomes a violent thief. The other one becomes a silly, lazy person. Yeah, there's no way to determine how everybody's going to react. It's about getting to know the person. And I think sometimes we get too caught up in the trauma, the event, and we forget. And that's why we need people like veterans doing this work. Because someone who's not a veteran, I want to know all the details of the bombs and this and that. I remember hearing my grandfather's story from World War II. God bless, my grandfather was a great man in World War II. He was part of the 43rd Cavalry. He drove an armored car. He did a lot of cool things. But when I heard the story, I was like, I want to see it explain it like a movie and make it sound cool.
Right.
I did not, until much later in my life, say to my grandfather, what did you feel? I was so concerned with the movie, I forgot about what actually happened to him. And the conversation became quite different, and what I saw was different. So we need veterans to be able to look past all of the bells and whistles and get right to the heart of it. Gentlemen, we believe it or not, we've killed the entire hour. You guys are fantastic. Can we do this again shortly?
Oh,
Yeah. The end of the summer, we'll get together again and we'll talk about your events coming up and all that stuff. How's that sound?
Yeah, perfect. Sounds good.
That's great. Now, again, Nick Eckley and Luis Panchi, thank you so much for your service and everything you do. If somebody wants to contact PTS Foundation of America or you guys specifically, what's the easiest way to contact you guys?
So it's either going to be by email or they can reach out to, we have a Tampa team line that all my guys can answer. It really just depends on what works out best for them. But I can so I put our crisis line into the chat right there, and then I can put our Tampa line in there too.
Okay. I put the crisis line out. It's 877-717-7873. That has gone out to all of it'll be in the comments on all of our shows. So look in the comments and the crisis line is there, 877-717-7873. Now, is this something where you have to be a veteran to call this?
No. So you can, like a family, most of the people that call are family members of.
That's what I was just going to say. A husband, a wife, a mother, father, somebody who's concerned can call here and get help, right?
Very rarely does a veteran say, "Hey, Nick, can you come and help me?" Right? It's usually mom, brother, sister, someone saying, "Hey, I need your guys' help," and we jump in. But yeah, it is technically called the Combat Veteran Crisis Line. We do specialize in combat veterans. At Camp Hope, you have to be a male combat veteran in order to go out there. Here in Florida, we work with all veterans of all eras. You don't necessarily have to be a combat vet. Just kind of the resources will kind of change and dictate a little bit of that. But for Camp Hope, it is for male combat vets only. Not that we don't care and love about our other vets. It's just we got to draw the line somewhere on funding to take care of guys. So, and I appreciate you having us on. I'd love to be on again. You guys are awesome. And thanks for everything that you guys do and training up our communities to be able to get in and intervene with some of those things.
Well, one thing too, that class we went to that you guys taught.
Yeah.
Man, that's one of the most, I don't know what word to use, but that was one of the best classes I've ever been at. Just the way you guys instructed it, the way you interacted with the class, man, I loved it.
It was relational. It was relational. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all lived it. You know what I mean?
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And that you guys had attended our intervention class, which shows you how to communicate with people who are in crisis, when to communicate with them, and more importantly, just how to make that connection with somebody. Because that's the big. If you can't connect, you cannot help. And that's why veterans reaching out to veterans is so important. Not that, listen, if guy's got a broken leg, you don't have to be a veteran to fix a broken leg. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is.
Right.
But like I said, if you're going to be in some real deep therapy on trauma, the person you're working with has to have some real knowledge, if not personal knowledge, at least lots and lots of training to understand how to deal with that. And having more resources is just so important. Obviously, use the VA, use any resource you have, but check out what's going on with the PTSD Foundation of America and reach out to these guys. These are good guys. Spent a full day with them and we had some fun and it was great. And I do appreciate you guys. But like I said, we're out of time, so I want to thank you guys for joining us. Any final
Thank you.
thoughts? I'm going to ask each of you a final thought. Maybe somebody's watching who's struggling right now. What do you want to say to them personally? We'll start with you, Luis. What do you want to say to somebody who's watching this and is struggling with bad thoughts or difficulty just reintegrating? What do you want to tell them?
The hardest step is always going to be change, right? To change your situation, to ask for help. That was the hardest spot for me, and it doesn't have to be hard, right? You know things are going on in your life that shouldn't be going on, thoughts, situations, whatever the case is. Ask for help, right? Someone's gonna help you, right? Someone that will lead you to somebody, that leads you to somebody else, that leads you to somebody else. Ask for the help. The help will
Excellent.
be there.
Excellent. Nick, how about you? Somebody's watching. What do you want to tell them?
You're not alone. You never did anything in the military alone, right? Whether it was boot camp, basic training, you follow on schools, deployments, you were surrounded by people, right? So why are we trying to do it alone now? Stop doing it alone. Reach out, get the help, ask for help. Will come. There are people out there that will come. I know there's a lot of people that don't say they will do things and this and that, but reach out to that crisis line. If you're struggling, give us a call. We man it 24/7, 365. If you call that phone number, someone's going to answer that phone. And we're going to talk to you. We're going to do what we can for you.
Absolutely. And the only thing I can share with people is, I've got a lot of family in the military. I don't have the military background, but I understand being in crisis and having trauma and addiction. And what I could say is that I always thought that asking for help was a sign of weakness. And actually, the strongest thing, the most brave thing you'll ever do in your life is to ask for help and to recognize that you need a helping hand. That's when we become mighty, if you will, is when we can do that. So again, Nick, Luis, thank you very much. PTSD Foundation of America, please check them out. And once again, if you want to donate to them, every penny helps. Take a few moments. You can donate. If you donate through this link, it goes straight to the Florida chapter. You help people right here in the state of Florida. But you could also go to their national website and help them nationally as well. But for now, you have been watching the Calling Podcast. I'm Scott Jones. One Brother, One Sister wants to thank you for your time, and Sober Life Studios as well. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye, guys.